Evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, April 23rd, 2018. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of the agenda as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda is approved. First, we have the minutes of our April 9th, 2018 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 4 through 8. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor of the April 9th meeting minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we have the minutes from our April 17th, 2018 Board of Equalization meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 9 through 11. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of those minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Last, we have the minutes from our April 19th, 2018 special meeting with the hospital, at the hospital. Those minutes appear at page 12. Are there any changes or corrections to those minutes? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
All in favor of those minutes as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. First up tonight, we have a public hearing on the City Code tobacco regulation modifications. And Todd, you want to go through some of the rules and regulations?
Mayor, members, you adopted rules a couple years ago for hearings of this type, so let me just go through a few of them. First of all, we typically start a hearing with a staff presentation, and I'll be doing that tonight on this issue. And then there's an applicant. They get an opportunity to address the council tonight. There isn't an applicant. This is something that's been discussed and brought forward by the City Council. Then we provide for public comment. Public comment per person is limited to 5 minutes, and so we try and keep very close track of that. And we hope that people stay on topic and bring facts and data. Typically, the council listens to testimony only, but doesn't discuss or usually ask questions of the speakers. We try and leave that for a different venue. After all the testimony has been provided for since it's public input, the mayor closes the hearing, and then action sometimes occurs later. Tonight, in this instance, action is planned for later in the meeting tonight, where the council discusses the pros and cons and the citizen input as to that. If I can jump right in. So included in your packet, Mayor members, on page 35 is information related to the city code modifications that staff was directed to prepare.
Excuse me, Todd.
Please.
I neglected
Time.
to say.
Sorry.
We are going to open the public hearing for the tobacco regulations at 7:04 p.m. on Monday, April 23rd, 2018. Sorry.
No, again, in the packet, Mayor members, on page 35, the information starts out and the modifications to the city code are provided thereafter. This is really following the state statute related to the notice provision, which includes at least 30 days notice to license holders and written notice of this within the appropriate notification portions, which include our website and other locations. The proposed changes really only do 2 things, but there are 3 sections related to that within our city ordinance. First of all, it makes the sale or the provision of tobacco products to anyone under the age of 21 years old unlawful. In addition to that, it makes it illegal to try and utilize or allow for the use of a false ID to be able to purchase for someone that's under 21 years old, or 21 years of age. One other thing that I'd like to mention, or actually 2 other things. First of all, I've had a few people question, the council in 2013 changed its definition of tobacco products. That was at the time when we started to see more vaping products occur. So the current definition that you have includes vaping and vaping products. And so if you make the modification, it would then be unlawful to sell to anyone under 21 years of age who's interested in those type of products as well. The last thing that I'll mention is that following your standard procedure, if you approve the modification tonight, it will become effective May 3rd. As a part of our notification process, and what we would intend to do here in the City of St. Peter is that if you do provide for approval of this, we would send written notice to all of the license holders, and of course it is published in the newspaper. The trigger is the publication within the newspaper for it being in effect. And so again, that would be on the 3rd of May. Mayor, members, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but this is the public input portion, and so questions can certainly be directed to me now or later as a part of your discussion under unfinished business.
Did anyone have anything? Jeff?
So when we changed the ordinance 5 years ago with the vaping, currently, under our current city ordinance, vaping, those sorts of things are unlawful for anyone under age 18.
Correct. The real driver at that time, John, just to provide additional clarification, was the goal of the council to ensure that those products were sold from behind counter and not available on some kiosk next to the milk or something like that. And so that was the reason it was changed at that time, or the basis for the rationale.
Anyone else? The only thing I'd like to reiterate is if the council could please refrain. We will have plenty of time when it comes later in the agenda for our discussion, but if we can refrain from asking questions of the people that are presenting, because they should feel welcome to be here. And we may not do that if we intimidate, especially John. With that being said, if there is anyone that would like to speak, what we will do first is hear people that would like to speak in favor of the change. And if you would just raise your hand, be recognized when you come up, give us your name, your home address, and if there's any discrepancy on how your name may be spelled, if you could spell your last name for us. So I saw a hand go up, and come on up, Mary.
Good evening, council members and administration. I'm Mary Hildebrandt. I'm the Director of Public Health for Nicollet County. My address is 204 North 5th Street. And I'm here tonight to say, you know all the data, you know what the issues are. I'm really thankful that you are taking this on, and I am very proud to be a St. Peter citizen right now. Thinking that this is a really tough decision. It's a tough decision because you have people on both sides, and you're going to have to decide whose voices are louder, what in your gut is telling you should do, and what you think should happen for our kids in St. Peter. And so I just appreciate the work that you've done and the investigating that you've done. And that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Whoever wants. I can't see the face, but here we go. Hi, Sandy.
Good evening. Mayor Seaman, Mr. Prafke, Council. My name is Sandra Renor, R-E-N-O-R. I live at 1921 Rock Ridge here in St. Peter. And my sentiments are greatly going to follow Mary. I'm a newly retired public health nurse, and I've been passionate about tobacco work for a long, long time. Last July, I sent some information titled Considering Tobacco 21 to all of the key decision makers in all of the communities in Brown, Nicollet, Le Sueur, and Waseca counties. I've heard from a few, but I want to thank you for bringing Tobacco 21 to this point, and also, along with Mary, to tell you how proud I am that you're outstanding in our region. So thank you so much for having us even be here right at this point. Communities like ours that are taking action towards strategies, policies, and ordinance modifications of Tobacco 21 are a threat to big tobacco, and that's a good thing. They don't like us doing this. Raising the legal purchase age is just one step that we can take so that the big tobacco companies do not work so relentlessly to attract our youth, which is a new generation of profit for them. I just came across a new product, and maybe you've seen this was in the April 1st Sunday edition of the Free Press. It's called Juul, and it's a product that is a rechargeable nicotine pen, and it looks like a flash drive. So students can use it in school. They can be very discreet about using it. They can even use it in class. It doesn't create any type of vapors or that type of thing. And 1 pod of nicotine concentrated to deliver about 200 puffs or as much as a pack of cigarettes. I know that you all know about all the products that are out there that are directed toward our youth, but since this one was so recent, I honestly didn't know about Juuling myself, so I just brought this along. You can get a head rush out of it. As a nurse, I don't want to see the kids getting an increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, plus the addiction. After Edina adopted Tobacco 21, I called the health promotion manager with the Bloomington Public Health Department to ask how things were going, because I know as a community, when we look at things that we are going to do that are different, we maybe want to look to those that have done something similar to that before us and see how it went. So I was curious. I asked, and the response was, there has not been any rumbles, no issues, no calls saying we can't do this. If we were going to hear something, we would have. The same for St. Louis Park. Retailers just wanted a little extra time to prepare for the new ordinance, and they wanted some help with signage. When 69% of our Mankato area residents voted yes for tobacco-free bars and restaurants in 2006, that action led to the Freedom to Breathe Act in 2007. I stood on a street corner once upon a time with a big sign that said, "Love your lungs, vote yes." I feel really excited about this. That was at the beginning of my career, so very personally, as newly retired, I was thinking, yes, Tobacco 21, toward the end of my working nursing career, that's going to be the next big thing. It was one of the most rewarding things I'd ever done for public health. Your vote to adopt Tobacco 21 could impact the state as well. So I just, again, want to thank you for the opportunity and also for everything that you do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Name and address, please.
My name is Michael Callahan. I live at 38234 466th Lane, and Callahan is spelled Callahan. I moved to St. Peter in 2006 with my wife, which puts us at about 12 years in the community, but amazingly, that's now longer here than anywhere we've lived since the childhood home that we grew up in. We did grow up in separate homes. That came out wrong. One of the things when we chose this community, it was very much a choice, and a lot of that was values. And I, in the community, have spent the last 10 years once a month bringing in professional comedians who come in, and for 60 minutes, they tell stories and they tell jokes, and we have a very consistent audience that laughs at those stories and those jokes. And it's those stories and those jokes' job to get that laugh. Occasionally, a comedian will tell a joke or a story that's so in line with the values of our room that the room not only laughs, but they applause. It's the goal. It's the ultimate goal in that kind of a setting. And the reason I wanted to speak tonight was that this issue, this policy, very much, I know you guys deal a lot with that 60 minutes that gets the job done, but this particular policy, from my perspective here in town, seemed very much like an opportunity to not only do the work of the policy, which, as they mentioned, the numbers are there, but it's also a chance to get an applause line. And that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Hi, My name is Leah Moat, that's M-O-A-T, and I'm at 800 West College Avenue, St. Peter. Good evening, my name is Leah Moat, and I'm a current senior at Gustavus Adolphus College, and I'm excited to be here contributing to decisions that I think will make this community a safer and healthier place. At the previous meeting, when this topic was discussed, I was present to lend my voice of support to the important action of proposing a Tobacco 21 ordinance in St. Peter. And I'm here again tonight, so appreciative of and motivated by the steps that have been taken to move this action forward. I'm ready to share again tonight why I believe so strongly in the importance of raising the legal tobacco purchasing age to 21 in this city. Unfortunately, Gustavus and my peers there are not immune to the reach of tobacco addiction, and this makes sense. We know that the levels of young adults using tobacco in Minnesota has risen for the first time in 17 years. Gustavus as an institution is concerned about tobacco use on campus, so much so that we're currently working on our own important restrictions to keep our community up on the hill safe and healthy. It clearly matters to us at Gustavus, and I think it matters to the other residents of this community. Because it's not just Gustavus students. It's the St. Peter High School students and other youth in this community. It's about their friends and their future roommates and partners and families. It's about giving these youth and young adults critical extra years before they choose to try or choose not to try this thing that can be so damaging to their lives. These are the people that will grow up and contribute to this town, so let's give them the chance to do that. I'm graduating in a few weeks, but I'm sticking around St. Peter to continue to work with the Public Health Department because of the pride I have in this community and because I am motivated by the progressive steps we're taking here to improve local health and safety. This ordinance gives me excitement because it shows that here we value health and we know that it contributes to making St. Peter a happier, safer, and more vibrant place. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Name and address, please.
Good evening. Lon Knudsen, 573 Forest Lane in North Mankato. I'm a pediatrician at the Daniels Health Center in St. Peter. I've been there the last 10 years and have worked with the Mankato Clinic in the last 33 years in this area. And as a physician that sees young kids every day, I came to urge you to support this policy change that can help prevent the youth in our community from a lifetime of addiction. The adolescent brain, as you've probably been told, isn't fully developed until the age of 25. And we know that nicotine can cause a more intense addiction in the adolescent brain and disrupt learning and attention. Nicotine can reach the brain within 7 seconds of puffing on a cigarette or e-cigarette. And the area of brain responsible for executive functioning that you hear so much about these days with the ADHD and certain educational difficulties, and also involved in impulse control, which obviously is a very important element in brain development in the adolescents. This area of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and it's very vulnerable to nicotine's effects. Nicotine acts to unlock a receptor on the cells of the brain and causes these cells to release signaling type brain chemicals or molecules such as dopamine that then travel from cell to cell between these nerve cells. And when they reach the neighboring nerve cell, they release their message that will give users the immediate high or change in their focus. We see a lot of adolescents in our practice self-medicating for attentional disorders, for depression, for anxiety, and There's other addictive issues that you're probably well aware of, be it pornographic materials, gaming type of things. And all of these tend to release a dopamine effect in the brain, which gives you more immediate pleasure. The adolescent brain is particularly susceptible to this, and after repeated exposure to nicotine, these brain cells can change, and they reduce the body's ability to reduce their own pleasure-giving chemicals. The brains of teens who smoke or vape may create more receptors to handle the flood of nicotine that they have come to expect. And as the number of receptors increases, these teens will need more nicotine to get the same type of high. That makes the nicotine users want hit after hit and produce even more side effects. Again, as she just mentioned, for the first time in 17 years, we're seeing an increase in use of tobacco products or nicotine-containing products. And a lot of this is, in my experience, an issue of self-medicating. And if we acknowledge that this is a legal drug that's okay for the 18-year-old, then we're going to see more and more use for the teens. My last comment is one of the reasons why I chose to come over to St. Peter and practice is because there was some practice development things that I wanted to work on before the end of my career. Recognizing that St. Peter is a place that is open to change. It's a community that I've long respected for doing the right thing. And I encourage you to do the same in your consideration of this modification of your city code. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Name and home address, please.
Can I pass something around here?
You sure can. Why don't you just hand it to the end and Steve will send it on.
So my name is Erin Simmons. I live at 52698 Valley View Circle. And what I'm passing around is the actual jewel of what Sandy was showing you earlier. Our young people are calling this juuling, and they are frequently using it in school and even in the classrooms. They're able to hold it in their fist and take an inhale without the teacher even noticing. Because of the mint and candy flavor associated with this product, I'm watching you there. Because of the mint and candy flavor associated with this product, it's really difficult for adults who care about kids to even notice they have it in their fist, much less to smell it, because it smells just like fruit and candy. What we shared with you last month is that the Minnesota Youth Tobacco Survey has recently come out showing that huge increase in youth use. The greatest percentage of youth tobacco use is electronic cigarettes. The first community to pass Tobacco 21 did so approximately a decade ago, and since then, roughly 300 communities have joined them. One of the measures that I use as I'm looking at what policies might be a good fit for our communities is whether or not those who did it first and did it some time ago have reversed their opinion. Have they gone back and said, yeah, that didn't work, we're gonna get rid of that one? No communities have reversed their Tobacco 21 policy. They've found it to be extremely effective, reducing youth use by as much as 25%. When we're talking about 102,000 of current Minnesota kids dying of tobacco-related diseases later in life, 25% is a really big number. You have the opportunity to make an impact, starting with the kids here in St. Peter. I think you've heard from a lot of folks who live here in St. Peter who are in support of this. You've heard from the Minnesota Department of Health. You've heard from Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the reason that you're hearing about all of this support is because of the tremendous value that we place on our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in favor of the change? Dr. Stelter.
Good evening. I'm Keith Stelter. I live at 355 North Welco Drive. I was here about a month ago and spoke to you as well, and have been in correspondence with a couple of you, some questions that came up at the last time that I testified, and I hope I was able to answer those to your satisfaction. I think, you know, society and our world that we live in continually evolves, and one of the issues I brought to you last time was that, you know, we used to allow smoking in airplanes, and we don't, of course, do that anymore. And we used to smoke in restaurants, and of course, we don't do that anymore. And we actually used to have 18-year-olds be able to buy alcohol legally, and of course, we don't do that anymore, because as knowledge comes forward, we realize some of the things that have been talked about by Dr. Knudsen and others, that that is not a good decision. And tobacco falls into that same realm of the information and things that we know now, that really holding tobacco, at least to the age of 21, will save lives. It'll protect the youth. It'll keep their brains healthy. And so St. Peter, being a progressive community, I'm honored to be here again, that you took the courage to take this issue up. You know, we need to do the right thing for our kids, but also I would say that we can be a leader in this region, a leader in the state. Some of the metro communities have taken this up, but you know, up to this point, only one non-metro community really. And this could be a very pivotal moment for all of you, and you could be at the forefront of this. So I just want to thank you again for the time to come up here and speak to you again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition of the change? Seeing no one, we will close the public hearing for the City Code tobacco regulation modifications at 7:27 p.m. All right, next we will move into visitors. Are there, excuse me, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any item whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move into the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 14, excuse me, and concludes with the resolution on pages 32 to 34, and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $7,500 to R&E Enterprises for milling for up to 32 hours for $18,000, to Frontier Precision for Trimble Geo 7x handheld GPS GIS system for $7,813, to Quality Flow for a VFD replacement for $10,541. The following licenses are renewals for temporary on-sale beer to the St. Peter Softball Association for 1401 Nicollet Avenue, and the St. Peter Baseball Association for 500 West Scarrow. Those are both from dates 5/1/18 to 7/29/18. Temporary soft drink license to St. Peter Softball Association and St. Peter Baseball Association for those same addresses for the dates of 5/1/18 to 10/27/18. A soft drink license to St. Peter Farmers Markets for Mulberry and Minnesota Avenue from April 23rd, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. We have a list of seasonal employee appointments, and I didn't count how many there are, but there are a page and a quarter of them. plus the regular schedule of disbursements for April 5th, 2018 through April 18th, 2018. Are there any questions about the consent agenda?
So a VFD control is an electronic control for a pump motor.
Is that what it is?
Yes, it is. I had to look it up.
Thank you. Ed?
Todd, I maybe asked you about this before, but on some of the wages for the part-timers, the $7.65, is that, do we have different requirements on the minimum wage?
We do. This is a policy decision that the council made at a couple of years ago when there was additional discussion about modifications to minimum wage. Specifically with these cashiers, we are exempt in these seasonal appointments, and so these were considered to be exempt. You could take similar action related to lifeguards. However, at the time, and I still frankly believe that if you're not at this wage level, you're not going to get people that are going to take that training and be lifeguards at your pool. And so that's why you see the difference in those cashiers, between cashiers and lifeguards.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? If not, is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any more questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Bart.
Councilmember Pawnee?
Aye.
Mayor Zimmerman?
Aye.
Councilmember Brand?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Grams?
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we go to unfinished business, and the first up is the City Code Tobacco Regulations Ordinance.
Mayor, members, I can cover it again if you'd like. We're really looking for two modifications that have been instructed related to the municipal code, two of which make it against the law to sell to persons under 21 years of age, and the second of which relates to the use of false ID for purchase. The modifications are included in your packet on page 37 on to page 38. If the council votes in the affirmative, this would take effect on May 3rd. Happy to answer any additional questions, Mayor and Council, you might have.
Questions or comments?
Have we heard anything from Mankato? Are they doing,
I have not. I don't know if anybody else has. I don't believe I haven't seen or heard anything from it being on their agenda coming up.
and when was North Mankato's going to go into effect?
Well, they voted on it, and I think there might be, maybe Todd, you can give some clarification on this. They passed it, but they delayed the start of it till the first of the year. Now, whether they can legally do that, I'm not so certain, because once you publish, I believe you have to enact. Is that true, Todd? Is that
Yeah, I mean, the position that I would have as the city administrator is that there's a uniform procedure, and the council shouldn't vote a second time on publication. Publication is something that should be par for the course, or a matter of form and function. Once you approve ordinance modification, it should just follow appropriately. Now, if the council wants to make a modification, that's something that can be made as a part of the ordinance itself and establish a different date, but under your current rules, it would be May 3rd.
I just still have a real hard time with this, and I realize the health issues. I've talked to quite a few people on the phone and so forth, but within 10 minutes, they can still get to them
Jerry?
in all directions.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. Jerry?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
At 16 years of age, our young people can get driver's license. They can be on our streets and roads in a 3,000-pound car, and they take the responsibility for doing that. At 18, you can vote for the Senate and House representatives, governor, even president, the local city councils, county commissioners, and that's a responsibility that they've been taking. Also at 18, you can be subscripted into the military, and usually you end up being sent to some armpit third world country where there's a good chance you losing your life or losing limbs, or in many cases having your mind very confused with what either you have seen or have been forced to do in those situations. And many of those people come back without being able to join the community that they left because of the problems they've picked up. We But now you look at, you can't go down to your local hardware store or sports department and buy a .22 rifle so you can go out and hunt rabbits and squirrels. You can't go down to that same hardware store or sporting goods store and buy a shotgun so that you can hunt ducks, geese, pheasants, or even shooting sports like trap, skeet, and sporting clays. Evidently, I have a lot more faith in our young people for the responsibility they take in doing things, and the possibility of moving that age bracket up, to me, is contrary to everything that we're doing. Many young people have tried cigarettes, and a lot of them have quit. They don't like it. Then that was the case way back when I was growing up, almost 100 years ago. But it's because of the differences. We're expecting responsibility from these young people to make decisions, and if they aren't given that responsibility when they're younger, in their formative years, I don't know how you can expect them at age 21 to suddenly become responsible adults. And for that reason, I am going to vote against this ordinance. Thank you.
Anyone else? John?
It's a mixed bag of what you're allowed to do when you're 18 and what you can't do until you're 21. You're allowed to get a license and drive a 4,000-pound car, but you're not allowed to rent one. Rental companies won't rent to people under age 21, and there's a reason for that. Their judgment is not well enough formed. Their sense of control and impulse, they don't believe. Their insurance companies don't believe well enough, so they won't rent to people under age 21. If you're not 21, you can't sit here in the city council. You can't. You can vote for city councils, but you can't be in the city council, make decisions that affect the community. You can't go out and buy a beer. There's a lot of things you can't do until you're 21. Whether they have good judgment or not good judgment, society has decided that some things are allowed and some things are not.
Yeah. Steve?
Mr. Pratke, what if someone were convicted, if we did change the ordinance, and someone was convicted of selling tobacco or tobacco product to someone, what is their, and they were taken to court, what would their offense be? Would it be a misdemeanor? Okay.
The penalty in place currently, which is not looked at being changed as a part of this modification, is a misdemeanor.
All right.
Steve, go ahead.
Relative to some of these issues that were brought up by Jerry, you know, regarding voting, yeah, I know you can vote when you're 18, but my issue relative to people when they're 18 voting is how informed are our 18-year-olds? And in terms of vehicles, yes, you can drive a car when you're 16, but we all pay for higher rates. The vehicle owner gets the first stab, but we all pay higher rates across the board for everybody. And accidents are much more prevalent the younger you are. In terms of the military, you know, the old men start the wars and the young people are dying in those wars. And maybe we wouldn't have as many folks with post-traumatic stress and blown up legs, disfigured faces, if our military draft or volunteer were older, and our folks that were in the military would maybe question what they were doing first. In terms of 21, bringing it to 21, we've heard a lot of information regarding the number of people that would potentially not smoke. But we don't talk about the number of children, young children that are exposed to the smell of smoke on their parents, mother primarily, get a sense of security from that smell because that's the smell of their mother. And I'd like to know what the data would reflect on what percentage of those would go on to become smokers themselves. So, I mean, I look at, we're doing more, we're hopefully creating a younger generation that would not start smoking because of the sense of security that they have with their parents, starting at such a young age.
Anyone else? Jeff?
There are three things I'd like to address tonight on this subject because I think they're important to note. If you look at the folks in the audience and the folks that have contacted us, who's against this? Well, the big tobacco industry, for one, is against it. But if I look at the audience, it's mostly and primarily youthful people who are here in the audience with families. See a lot of children in the audience as well, which is exciting. I just think that youth are making decisions. Unfortunately, there's an increase amongst youth in the usage of tobacco products. I think that has to do with technology because the big tobacco industry has decided that they have to adapt to get a new, younger audience of folks to become addicted and have a lifelong addiction to this particular substance. As I walk around in breaks and things like that when I go to the coalition events, I talk to a lot of folks in a lot of other communities. There's 836 communities in Minnesota. I would say the majority of them aren't as progressive as St. Peter for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of other communities look at St. Peter as a point of reference to where they could be in their communities. And I think that's important to note too, for a lot of different reasons, but I think particularly people in the other communities are going to pay attention to what we decide here tonight. And I think that we have, maybe not an obligation, but we have a chance or an opportunity to really knock this out of the park and say, this is the way our state is going to go, if not now, down the road. And so I would really hope that we would consider being leaders amongst our peers in our communities across the state. And lastly, I just wanted to point out one of the bigger items that's really impacted me the most in this whole discussion, and it's the number of experts, folks who have lived and seen things in their fields of study that I wouldn't want to count today. But we've got a lot of folks who are pediatricians in the audience. We've got folks who are nurses in the audience. We've gotten letters from the Minnesota Department of Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the Minnesota Medical Association. Those are folks that we should be able to count on as experts in their fields. None of them are saying, don't do this because we don't want big tobacco to make money. They're saying, don't do this simply because our youth are more important than what products there are out there for the youth to decide. In 3 years, when they're 21, they can decide to do whatever they want. But the experts are all telling me that between 18 and 21 is still a formative period of time in the person's brain where they can make bad decisions, and unfortunately it's very difficult to reverse the effects of smoking. In a lung, for 7 years, you've got tar and all kinds of junk in your lungs. Cancer is a situation where 1 out of 2 people in this country will get cancer in their lives. That's a scary statistic. And to bring it home, I lost my grandfather and my great-grandfather to smoking. My great-grandfather when I was very, very young, and I didn't really understand what was going on. But my grandfather when I was an adult and could understand what was going on. And to see that happen really changed my perspective on this issue. And in any instance where I see something like this where I have the opportunity to vote in favor of it, I'm voting against the big tobacco industry, and I'm voting against the folks that are trying to make the youthful people addicted to these harmful, negative substances. And so I hope that all of us tonight will at least think besides the ideology and the politics and think more about what we can do for our youth in this state and in this country, and set us on a course and a path where people respect us for standing up and saying, we want this.
Ed? Sorry, Ed.
One more comment. I would not have a problem with this if it was state, because then it's the whole state, it's the whole community, it's the whole surrounding area. I do have a problem when it's just this community, and that's why I'll be voting no, because within 10 minutes, they can get cigarettes, the e-cigarettes, and whatever product they want.
Jeff?
One thing that I've thought about from that standpoint too, Ed, that's valid. The one thing that I would point out is if you lived in a border community, you'd probably say the same thing. Because people always can migrate to and from, to Iowa, to South Dakota, Wisconsin, North Dakota, that sort of thing too. I just think this is how we start, and we've got history and precedence of how we start changing policies in the state with the Indoor Clean Air Act. And that's all I wanted to point out.
Anyone else? Steve?
I understand where you're at, Ed, because I really struggled with this too from the very beginning when we had conversations and workshops. And I really believe what you're saying. I felt the same way, Ed. But you know, I live in St. Peter, and what happens in St. Peter is what's important to me. And when I tell people that I live in St. Peter, I'm proud that I live in St. Peter. And I do all my shopping in St. Peter. And to me, the values that the city, our administration for the city, is important to me. And I felt that this would reflect the values of what St. Peter represents, and that's why I changed my position initially. So, and I broke my neck when I was 15, and I got exposed to people on a unit at the university that were all dealing with cancer. And I saw people without the ability to speak. And they had to use, at 16, I didn't understand what these things were. And those people were exposed to the cancer from cigarettes. And I've seen, I've gone to different museums that had mummified humans that were smokers and those that weren't. And there's a big difference between the lungs. So I just, whatever way that we can do to try to prevent as much smoking as we can, at least people to dissuade them from starting, is, I think, a good thing, and it represents the values of our community.
Anyone else? I have a couple comments. You know, to me, I've gone back and forth on this issue myself. About 6 weeks ago when we discussed this matter, I thought we had a good compromise when we were decided with the resolution that we were going to act when Mankato and North Mankato approved, and then we would go along with that, or we would take a look at it at that point. My concern was and is the way this affects St. Peter commerce and businesses. Ms. Carlin, who is not here tonight, she made a point the last time, 6 weeks ago, that 18 to 21-year-olds are not buying groceries when they go out to buy cigarettes. And I agree, that's probably not going to happen. But I think there are other scenarios that may have a secondary or a tertiary effect on some of this. 9 months out of the year, most of our 18 to 21-year-olds are up on top of the hill at Gustavus. And my wife and I last weekend, we were down at El Agave, and here's something that came up. If you have a carload of 6 Gustavus students coming down to go to El Agave, and one of them is still a smoker, trying to quit, but he's still a smoker. And they said, hey, Joe over here is still smoking, so we need to go, we can't buy cigarettes here, we need to go to Mankato to do it. Well, as long as we're over in Mankato, let's eat over here. We fight hard for to bring businesses into this town and to keep them, fluid, to keep them functioning. And, I just think that that's something that can have an effect. I don't know why we need to potentially chase people over. The other thing is, I don't think he has one now, according to the previous owner, but the guy that owns Hobbers. If he doesn't have a tobacco license, if I were him, I'd go get one if we change this. Because what's easier than going over there? Now, he's a member of the Chamber of Commerce, St. Peter Chamber of Commerce, and I wish him all the success in the world, but he does not pay one dime in St. Peter property tax or a county property tax. So, you know, if we're sending people over there to do something else, I agree with Mr. Johnson. I support a statewide. I even agree with the regional one with Mankato, North Mankato and us. But in the conversations I've had with the Mankato, some people from the Mankato Council, if we vote in favor of this, the ones that they voted no, they said it's not going to make any difference at all to them. They're pretty much done with it. And I guess, to me, the nailing the coffin, for lack of better, is if I'm sitting on that Mankato Council and North Mankato and St. Peter has voted for Tobacco 21, I don't know if there's any motivation for those 4 that voted against it to vote for it, because keep them coming, keep sending people over here, you know, because that's helping our businesses out over here. And like I say, statewide, as Ed said, statewide, regional even, I'm all on board. But I think it's jeopardizing some of our businesses here in not an initial situation, but in secondary and tertiary situations. And that's all I have to say. Anyone else with any other comments? Todd, did you want to?
Yeah, if I could, Mayor members, this is an unusual situation that we have since you only have 6 votes that are here, so I just wanted to explain the rules. Just, you guys all know the rules, but some of the people out in the audience may not know the rules. So as you vote, of course, it'll be a roll call vote. If it's a tie vote, that means that the modification does not pass. A majority is required to pass.
I have a question. We operate under Robert's Rules of Orders. If a motion does not pass, it could be brought up. When we started this, we said we would talk about this when everybody was here. And Susie texted at 10 to 7 that she could not make it. And it's unfortunate that we are trying to do this without everybody here when that was the agreement that we had among ourselves. Under Robert's Rules of Orders, if a motion passes, it could be brought up again by anybody or just by those who voted in the majority to vote it down, or how does it work? Christopher? Somebody?
Well, let me jump in. Let me ask a different question, John, because the question that you asked was not clear to me. If you were asking how can the issue be
That's
brought...
what you said the last time I asked a question.
It's a constant theme, isn't it?
It is.
It is a constant theme. If the council votes on this issue and votes in the negative, council members can bring this to the floor again and can ask to have it be on the agenda again, and you have established rules for that. The rules that you have in place indicate that 2 council members or more can request that this be put on the agenda, and they can request it in writing to the city administrator's office, and I'm obligated to put it on the agenda.
Okay.
And so, even though it is true, John, that you do follow Robert's Rules of Order, and what you indicated is correct, I believe, relative to Robert's Rules of Order, I also believe that your ordinance supersedes that and provides regulation of how that moves forward.
Jeff?
I would make a motion that we table this for a period of 2 weeks until the next city council meeting for the purposes of us having a full body to make a decision together one way or the other.
I'll second that.
Yeah, it shouldn't.
There's a motion on the floor to table this for 2 weeks, and it has been seconded. Is there any discussion about that?
What happens if somebody's gone in 2 weeks?
We'll table it again. The agreement we had when we started this was that we were all in this together. The same with borrowing the $34 million. We're all in this together.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? What we're voting on now is to table this for a 2-week period. And it's been, Barb, you want to call the roll?
If I can, as a point.
Voice vote?
Yeah, it's just a voice vote. If I
Sorry.
can, as a point of clarification, it would not be 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It would be 3 weeks.
Oh, yes.
This month has 5 Mondays in it,
Yeah.
and so just to be clear on when it would occur. So at the next regular meeting. And so this is a voice vote, not a roll call vote.
Okay. All in favor of tabling this ordinance discussion movement for our next regular council meeting, signify by saying aye.
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 Oppose?
Nay.
Nay. Motion does not pass. Next, we will go back to the ordinance. And the ordinance appears on pages 37 and 38. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman,
Nay.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Nay.
Councilmember Grahams,
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer,
Nay.
Councilmember Kwame.
Aye.
Resolution, or excuse me, ordinance does not pass because of the 3-3 vote. Next up, we have the Front Street Substation Project. And Pete?
Mayor Zeman and City Council, before you, I have a request to complete the final payment to Premius Avina, who is the contractor who installed the materials for the Front Street substation work. As you may recall, we hired DGR Engineering to design a project for us last year, our Stage 1 process. They did come in and design that work for us when we did this project in 2 phases. We had Power Grid Solutions supply the materials, and we had Premius Avina install the materials. Everything went very well. The switchgear, the feeder breakers, the duct banks, and the control cable were all installed, tested, and everything went well. We did have one change order on there, which is part of this process here that I'm asking you to approve, and that was to improve the automation and the control box between the substations that makes a communication link. We had to upgrade the box on the Front Street side. And we'll do some additional work with Stage 2 in that area there that will allow us to do some communications and control those structures. As I mentioned, this project went well. DGR was our engineer. $52,500 is what we paid them to design this project. The materials were $159,290, and the installation was $208,840.06 for a total final Phase 1 cost of $426,30. We were just about $30,000 under our estimated preliminary cost. We were happy with that. We are going to be working with DGR here in the near future. I'll be back in front of you to get design work for Stage 2 of this process, and we'll probably do that in phases as well over the next few years. But at this time, I'd ask you to approve the resolution on page 41 and authorize final payment in the amount of $37,738.45. And I'm available for questions.
Questions? Steve?
Pete, when you talk about Stage 2 in rehabilitation, it sounds like you've done a lot of work already. What would Stage 2 just briefly entail?
Stage 2 is basically the other half of this equipment plus additional links between the substations to allow them to communicate a little better. If you remember, and Todd may have discussed this in one of your goal setting sessions, is we did a 10-year plan about 10 years ago, and this was the last item out of those phases that would complete that 10-year plan to get us to where we are now in operations. This has improved our redundancy within our system. We have minimized our critical infrastructure, And, I mean, we've minimized our outages related to critical infrastructure, and we've improved our delivery of electricity to our customers.
Okay, thanks, Pete.
Anyone else? If not, the resolution for accepting the Front Street substation improvements appears on page 41. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Bart.
Councilmember Brand,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quaney.
Aye.
Mayor Zima.
Aye. Resolution passes. That concludes our unfinished business. Next, we have new business, and first up is Mr. Moulton again with the 2018 seal coating project.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, we're asking that you approve Caldwell Asphalt from Haywick, Minnesota. They bid the seal coat in the amount of $2.54.5 per gallon for a price not to exceed $132,818.46. Part of the maintenance budget that we review with you in January and February talks about seal coating. We're going to seal coat about 100 blocks. We're going to purchase about 52,188 gallons of emulsion oil to put down before the P-rock is applied. We have the rock on the lot. We have the rock ready to go. It's sifted and cleaned. This is a project where we coordinate with the contractor to lay the rock down. They come in with large distribution oil tankers, and we do traffic control, load some rock for the contractor. We also sweep and collect the stone at the time of completion. And so what we're asking is, our goal is to do about 100 blocks, and what we're asking is that you authorize the resolution on page 44, and this will set staff in motion to get everything lined up for an August application.
Questions? Jeff?
You had said sifted and cleaned, but I just remember every year it kind of being dusty.
Yeah.
How does it get so dusty?
Well, there's always fines in a lot of the material.
Okay.
The clean rock that comes from the New Ulm Quarry, we do not sift or clean. We clean and sift the rock we reclaim.
Sure.
And so we mix that from time to time, and some areas are a little dustier than others.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
If I can add one more item to that, and I think it gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, is that, as some of you may remember, we don't use P-rock, actually. We use chip seal, so we use granite chips.
Yep.
And that is much less dusty,
Yep,
and it's
harder.
much harder, so it has a longer useful life for us as well. So I wanted to mention those two items.
Right, and as Todd didn't mention, but was evident during the competitive bidding process here, this is the first year that we went to the sealed bids, and you could see that the top prices were within 1% of each other. And so we feel very good about any of the three contractors that bid this project going forward.
Ed?
Pete, you were talking about reclaim. How much is that reclaimed and how much actually stays on the road?
Oh,
Or
my
do you have a figure?
street foreman or maintenance superintendent would be able to tell you that, but, and they calculate that when we go into the budget process of what they have in their inventory, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head right now.
Okay,
I'll try to find that out for you.
just curious.
Yep.
Anyone else? The resolution awarding the bid for the 2018 street seal coating project appears on page 44. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Graham.
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Councilmember Quaney.
Aye.
Mayor Zima.
Aye.
Councilmember Brand.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next up, we have a change order for Highway 99.
Asphalt bid.
Next up, we have an asphalt purchase. Is that for Highway 9? No. I made too many crosses there. I
Yep,
think.
no problem. Mayor Zeman and City Council, a critical member of our maintenance team is the asphalt installation on what we do here. We do the asphalt installation in two different applications. We do a full block replacement. That's where we come in and we mill off all the surfaces, check the base material, curb and gutter, drainage, and we also do full depth patching. So in the past, we used to do quite a bit of pan patching, just really adding asphalt to the surface. And what we ended up with was higher crowns. Sometimes we did that to improve the drainage. Where we're seeing the improvement is when we come in and take a certain area and we cut that asphalt out, reclaim that asphalt. We do use that for base in some instances, but we call that full depth patches. And what we do is we get a little better mix. The asphalt mixes now are very high quality, and it gives us a lot longer life on our roadways. And so with those two in play, we're asking that you approve not only the full depth, but the full block replacement in the tune of about $171,900. We did have two competitive bids in this process. We had SMC operating as OMG south of town here, and we have WW Blacktop Incorporated. WW supplied the lowest price for the materials. However, they are farther away, and as we go to haul that material, the cost that we have calculated is about $2.15 per mile, and that's all in with truck, fuel, labor to get that asphalt back here. The distance difference drives the cost higher than the asphalt that's closer with the mix that's available. And so what we're asking you to do tonight is to authorize SMC to furnish and deliver those materials. As you've seen in the past, there are days where SMC's plant is down. And so what we'll try to do is balance our workload out with the equipment and the materials that are available. There may be days that we have to get some of that asphalt from WW to finish a project on short notice. But overall, our plan would be to spend about $171,900 on street improvements this year. I'm asking that you approve the resolution on page 47.
Questions? Stephen?
Pete, you'll have to excuse me, I don't understand one sentence. It says, in this year's street maintenance program, et cetera, such as 1/2 inch wear or 3/4 inch wear course, top 3 inches. Is it 1/2 inch wear and 3/4?
There's actually 4 different mixes that we use in our street process. We use a 1/2 inch wear and a 3/4 inch wear. We also use a base material. Each contractor can supply a different material, and they go with different applications. So an example would be if we're doing a collector street where we have a 7-inch base or a 9-inch base and 2 3-inch lifts on that material, we may use a different quality of material based on what we're going to do with that roadway. And so what we did was ask each company to bid certain volumes, and then we take that number based on what we think we're going to do to come up with an average cost. So they're just, the difference between a 1/2 inch wear and a 3/4 inch wear would be the density and the quality of what we need to make that road complete.
Okay, all right, thanks, Pete.
It's, that number is describing the average size of aggregate that's included within the mix. So it's kind of like the difference between granular sugar and powdered sugar.
Okay.
They're both sugar, but
Yep.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Any other questions? Not the resolution awarding the bid for the 2018 asphalt purchase appears on page 47. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Grahams?
Aye.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Mayor Zeman?
Aye.
Councilmember Brand?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next up, boy, this sounds familiar. We have the Highway 99 reconstruction project, change order. Thank you.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, we're here tonight just to talk about the changes that have occurred on Trunk Highway 99 between Minnesota Avenue and the bridge there. Broadway Avenue, as we call it, we had several small or minor changes along the line. Most of those were covered by MnDOT, but nonetheless, because of the federal and state funding that's tied into this project, we need to have the council approve these changes as we've gone forward. I won't touch on any of the minor changes there, as you can probably read that, but it does talk about transit pipe and concrete pipe, some concrete tie-ins where we were at with Minnesota Avenue. We did some mock-ups, and then we had to do some grinding on the 2009 project to take a lip off. Like I mentioned, most of those minor changes were covered by MnDOT. We also had two, what we call change orders. We had some construction signage that was needed to be installed down by the Chamber Building because the bridge contractor and the road contractor were taking up a lot of the area. We had to put some signage in there to try to alleviate some of the parking and traffic concerns that we had there to get the project done. We're also asking that you change the completion date from October 11th back to June 1st, 2018. We did have some trouble getting one of the arms that hold the stop lights, traffic signals up for us. That has been received by the contractor, and they will get that up before June 1st. One supplemental agreement, which was a positive for the city's MSA account, and that would be to reimburse the city because of the switch that we did with the planter wall down there to change it from a limestone to a poured concrete base there. So the total would be, MnDOT will be responsible for $17,050.24. The city's MSA account, which is the municipal state aid process that we use for projects like this, will be credited $13,961.50, and our electric utility will pay for the pipe removal in the amount of $3,211.99. And I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. There's a resolution on page 50.
We're always learning new stuff here on the council. Number 3, concrete tie-in and a dowel bar. Can you tell me and the rest of St. Peter what those two items are?
Where we butted up to the existing project with concrete, the recommendation was to drill a hole and install a dowel bar in there to keep those two different concrete lines staying together.
Okay.
It's a strengthening method with old and new concrete.
It's kind of like in woodworking.
Yep,
Same.
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Pete, last week we had a meeting with the Hospital Commission, and that project, they were talking about a percentage that change orders, they try to stay within a range for change orders. Do you know what percent, or what was the total cost of this project?
I do not off the top of my head. I will have that information for you when I bring a close to this project,
But
probably.
my recollection is this was well over $1 million, was it
Yeah,
not?
Jeff,
1.3.
Jeff might have that number off the top of his head.
1.3 what, Jeff?
Or so.
Million.
So speaking from the 17,000, then not very much.
Yeah, pretty
Over
minor.
the whole project?
Right.
Okay, all right. You don't have to get anything more than that, that's what I just
All right.
wanted to point out. As Pete mentioned, the resolution approving the change orders for the Broadway Avenue from Minnesota Avenue to the Minnesota River appears on pages 50 and 51. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Councilmember Corman?
Aye.
Mayor Zane?
Aye.
Councilmember Brand?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Councilmember Grant?
Aye.
Resolution passes. Next up,
Thank
we
you.
have the resolution and Recreation and Leisure Services Director job description. Todd.
Mayor members, as you know, at your last workshop, we announced that Jane had announced her retirement at the end of August. And so part of my goal is to continue to move the process forward, so you're in a position to hire a new Director of Recreation and Leisure Services, and hopefully have one that starts, well, at about the time that Jane would retire. Maybe it's a couple of weeks before, a week before, a couple of weeks after, but kind of in that same time frame. The job description that you see in front of you is a red line version starting on page 54 and running through the end of page 56, and provides some adjustments. And so let me go through those starting on page 54, and certainly if you have questions, please let me know. But this job has evolved over the years dramatically. And frankly, this job description hasn't been changed for more than probably about 25 years. And so my goal is to update it relative to the activities that you have in place now. And I hope for us and for others to clearly describe what the job is about. Not in every specific detail, but certainly with enough specificity so that someone can understand the basics and the big picture of what the job is. So to that end, you'll see in a number of places we have added other things that this person would be in charge of, or frankly is in charge of now, which include the public library and the senior center. 20 years ago, the library wasn't managed here locally. It was managed through the Traverse des Sioux library system. And so that changed about 18 years ago, maybe 19 years ago or so. And so now this falls under recreational leisure services, as does the senior center, the community center, and public access, which was handled a little bit differently at that time. I've also included the pool, and although it has always been, the pool's always been directed under this position, it wasn't articulated anywhere in here, and I thought it would be important for that to take place as well. One of the other significant duties relates to working with the Director of Public Works and the Parks Board. They're supposed to manage that as a team, and there's a connection between facilities and programs. And so your Public Works Director brings the facilities portion, and the programming portion comes from your Recreation and Leisure Services Director. So I think it's appropriate to have that in there as well. One of the major sections that has been added relates to essential physical requirements. And so this is something that you have in, well, I think all of your job descriptions. It hadn't been in this one up until what I'm proposing today. This description matches what you have for most of the directors that you have in place. Finance director is the most recent one that you changed, and so it's very similar to what you see for your finance director. Somebody could ask, well, why do they have to carry 50 pounds on occasion? Well, on occasion, their recreation director is out in the field hauling stuff from a truck to a ball field and things like that. So there's rationale for that. Not that they're on an assembly line of any type and have to carry it all day long, but on occasion, they're going to have to carry up to 50 pounds. The minimum qualifications, I'm asking that you modify them, and in this, very similar to what I hope I did relative to the finance director position, in that I think we're broadening out a little bit. And so not just a degree in recreational services, but education, maybe sports management, library services, because going to the library is a major part of your recreation department, and then some additional experience in a progressively responsible position that has some type of recreation program development, that has budget development, which is important, of course, in our process, and employee supervision duties. This person, as compared to 25 years ago, has a pretty large staff, and certainly seasonally has a very large staff. And so it's important that they have ability to manage that staff appropriately, hire that staff, and train that staff appropriately. And then we've inserted this in most of your job descriptions. They got to have some ability to work with the public and some previous experience working with the public is very important. Previously, there hadn't been any desired qualifications, and as you know, within most of your job descriptions, we have desired qualifications. So if we're out shopping for this kind of person, what would be just, the winner? And so someone that has these kind of things should score higher than folks that don't. And so 3 years experience in supervising, training, or hiring staff. As I mentioned, staff is really important in this. Potentially a master's degree in maybe rec services, maybe education, master's degree, sports management, library services are all valuable, or certainly that are related or similar to that. There are now certifications as a recreation professional, and so if someone has that, they probably bring some more value, all other things being equal, than someone who doesn't. Experience in applying for grants and researching grants, that's a part of what we do and a part of what that position has done, and I think is worthwhile to have included in here. And working with recreation and facility scheduling software, as you know, with your agreements with the school district and certainly with this facility, all things equal, if somebody has a little bit of experience in that might be beneficial to you. I don't know that that should get a lot of points, but a point here, a point there might make a difference. And then again, more than 3 years of demonstrated experience in recreational programming budgets. Somebody who's done this more than a couple of times probably is more valuable than someone who's brand new to it. And so those are the modifications that I'm hoping for. I don't see this as changing substantially the work points or the pay equity value that you have in place. Certainly all of this is stuff that, well, I shouldn't say all, the vast majority of the stuff, and certainly the minimums, are things that you have in place currently, and I think should be continued. If you approve this tonight or make any additional modifications and then provide approval after that, this keeps our process rolling to advertise and provide for a new hire at some point in the near future.
Questions?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course. In the first page of the job description, in the last paragraph, it talks about the middle sentence says maintains a cooperative relationship with local schools, civic groups, agencies, and other organizations. This is the person who is the city representative for scheduling activities and facilities with all the city fields and the school district fields and the SCAVIS fields and everybody else in the town. This is the point person for the city. It's not the public works. They're the ones who do the work. They're the ones that come and tell this person whether the fields can be used or not. But this is the person that goes out and is the city rep, the point person.
Yeah, and lots of those things, John. You went through your list pretty quickly, so I can't say for sure that it's all of those, but certainly many of those that you mentioned, that's the case.
But nowhere in here does it say that they are the point person, the city representative for people outside the city wanting to use our facilities and for going out and finding other facilities that are not city-owned.
Fair.
It ought to. Neither does it say that that this person is the city representative for regional and state sport, recreation, and leisure groups. For instance, the Sports Authority in Mankato. They are the person in town who would interact with that group, I think.
That certainly could be added here, John, but in most of the job descriptions at this level, we have not gotten to that level of specificity, and we have left it to the counselor, the city administrator, to assign those.
It's the city administrator keeping close.
Tight grip on
tight
everything.
grip on everybody, yes.
Yes, without a doubt. And we've done that, John, because from time to time, those organizations change, and so we've frankly left it more loose. And there are times when we're asked to participate and times when we aren't invited to participate. And so we've tried to exercise flexibility. I think in some of the groups, or at least one of the groups that you've mentioned, it's a volunteer group and not something that there's an assignment. In fact, I think probably two of them are things that you don't have a documented seat at the table, although you participate very regularly. And our strength has been being able to work our way into participation through building relationships.
That is all true, and that has worked well for us. My concern is that because it is not mentioned anywhere, there is really no reason to show initiative from that position to go out and knock on the doors and say, hey, include us too. We want to be part of this, instead of sitting and waiting to be invited, which is what has happened with the Sports Authority in Mankato. I believe.
Yeah. John, I'd respectfully challenge that at least a little bit, in that I think your original point related to ensuring that this is the point person for those that are outside looking to us to schedule activities. I think we could articulate that it's also a goal to look for outside opportunities that enhance the community's recreational opportunities by working with our neighbors or something like that. That gives me a little bit more latitude and doesn't then necessarily tie us into specific groups or organizations.
I wasn't interested in tying to specific groups. It's just that someone is charged with showing initiative to going out and finding those things, joining those groups, joining state groups, much as Pete has done with state water groups.
That is also a policy issue as a part of the city council, where it's true that 20 years ago, or let me be more specific, 25 or 6 years ago, those types of activities were frowned upon by the city council. That has not been the case
Well,
over
sure,
the
it
last
took away
20
from
years.
daily work. There should be enough here to fill your day.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was part of those councils.
Yeah. My hope would be, John, is that if the council wants to make modification based on the theories that you proposed, that you give us a little bit of a language latitude to include that. I mean, I would see those as being friendly amendments. Again,
yes, they are.
Opportunity for folks from the outside to know who that point person is for scheduling here, and seeking additional recreational opportunities and cooperative efforts outside of our community as well.
The only thing that I disagree with, and maybe this is not something that you said, but maybe you don't care if it's included in that, is the word show initiative. I'm not sure how you measure that.
Yeah, frankly, that isn't something that that isn't language that I would prefer to include within a job description, but certainly making it a responsibility to, is something that we can do and I think appropriately articulate in a job description.
Showing initiative, to me, is degrees, could be degrees, and it's
Well,
very
sure, Jane,
subjective.
Jane shows initiatives in all those things that she's charged with doing. I'm just looking to expand that, so.
So you have enough latitude to see what we're doing here, or what do you?
I believe I
think,
understand.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments or questions? The resolution authorizing modification to the Director of Recreation and Leisure Services, this job description, appears on page 57. Is there a motion for approval?
Move the resolution, Mr. Mayor.
If I could, as a clarification,
Sure.
with those two modifications,
With
or
the-
with latitude for those two modifications.
With those two modifications, Jerry made a motion. Is there a second?
I will second with the latitude for those two modifications.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Quanah?
Aye.
Mayor Zeman?
Aye.
Member Brand?
Aye.
Member Johnson?
Aye.
Member Graham?
Aye.
Member Fight?
Aye.
Resolution passes with the two modifications. Next up, that concludes our new business. Next up, we have reports. I have a proclamation for Police Officer Memorial Day and Police Officers Memorial Week. And it states, whereas our nation's public safety officers are heroes who risk their lives to keep our families and communities safe, and whereas law enforcement personnel are dedicated to the communities they serve, and whereas police officers must continually remain vigilant and take courageous action, and whereas police officers put their lives on the line to protect ours, sometimes making the ultimate sacrifice, and whereas May 15th has been designated by the President as Police Officers Memorial Day, and whereas the St. Peter community honors and respects the sacrifices made by our police officers and wishes to extend gratitude to each and every member of the law enforcement community. Now therefore I, Charles Zeman, Mayor of the City of St. Peter, do hereby proclaim May 15th, 2018 as Police Officer Memorial Day and May 15th to 21, 2018 as Police Officer Memorial Week in the City of St. Peter, and hereby extend the gratitude of the St. Peter community to all St. Peter Police Department officers for their service to our community and their commitment to protecting those they serve, in witness thereof. And I don't have anything else to add. Todd?
Mayor members, I have just a couple, actually 3 items that I want to mention. First of all, to remind the council of the goal-setting session on Monday, April 30th. We start at 3 p.m. in this room. One of my goals is to have a longer meeting than you had last time.
Oh, no.
It was an hour and a half.
Those were the
Last
best kind. We didn't play bocce ball or anything.
We'll figure out something for you to do.
Ah, darn.
You have we have a wonderful agenda planned for
Somebody
you.
take Todd out to lunch again.
Yeah, right.
Tainted food.
Give him some gut bombs.
Potato salad in
So
the sun.
anyway, thanks for that help, folks. So anyway, 3 o'clock, you should expect the agenda to come out on Friday for you, so please be ready for that. The second one is I do want to mention that this is the first regular meeting where we have your new finance director here. So Sally Vogel is here, and she's in the audience. We didn't tell her to prepare anything, so if you just all greet her or say hi, that might be just enough for today.
Speech.
We won't get her on the hook right away. We'll give her a little chance here.
Welcome, Sally.
Yeah, thank you. And then the last one that I'll mention is Pete's team is out street sweeping like crazy. I do want to mention very
Again.
clearly that the last time they started this, it snowed, and the time before that, when they started it, it snowed. And so we're hoping that 3's the charm and it doesn't snow again, but they'll be out sweeping streets. And we want to make sure that we mention that if people have opportunity to kind of keep their cars off the street a little bit, that's really helpful. Part of the reason that we sweep streets is to protect the environment and pick up all that material before it gets to waterways and rivers and all those kind of things. Pete, you had one other thing?
Just that the flushing schedule will begin next Monday.
Oh, hydrant flushing, yeah. So watch the hot sheet for that. It's been in there before, but watch the hot sheet for that. And so that activity will be ongoing as well. And that's all that I have for you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor and members.
Anyone else? Anything to add? Steve?
I'd like to have Mr. Prathke say, sweep streets 3 times.
Sweep streets, sweep streets,
Yeah.
sweep streets. And actually, it's kind of ironic that you said 3 times. We actually do it about 5 times a year, or that's what we try to get done within the community to meet our SWIP. Say SWIP 3 times.
Anyone else have anything they want Todd to say?
Good night.
Anyone else have anything else to add? If not, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.